Well, we'll just go with it. Afternoon, everyone. We're in the afternoon session. Let's see, what do we have a request? Deborah? Yeah.
Good afternoon, Deborah Gardner, Cowlitz County Treasurer. Reason I'm here today is the request that we received from the Three Rivers Regional Wastewater Authority. I think you've seen the letter that they sent. So before Three Rivers went out on their own, they were part of the county. They took out bonds. We had the 2006 bonds and then we refunded them in 2015. When they went on their own, we still have those bonds on our books because we pledged the county's full faith and credit on those bonds. So if for some reason they didn't pay them, we would be responsible for paying them. So they're moving forward with a project that they want to defease these bonds, which means they can't really be paid off because they're within 2 years and they're not callable. So they can't be like just refinanced. The money they'll come up with the money, it'll go into a trust. And the defeasance means that it will actually be off their books, which will mean it will be off ours. Although the money will sit in trust until the end of 2015 when the bonds can be paid in full.
So that means the county will no longer be subjected to that final guarantee if the utility stops making the money available.
Right, because they're gonna come up with some other financing that will come up with the money to put it into the trust that will then pay it off, pay the next two payments in 2024 and 25. But in the meantime, because we're still involved in this, the resolution would designate the Cowlitz County Treasurer as the designated representative of that defeasance trust agreement that they have with the trust. So I just was here to let you know that this resolution, if you guys are okay with that, will be on your meeting next Tuesday to be signed, the resolution, and then they're gonna continue moving forward with their process.
So do you remain as the treasurer for the utility? Are you currently or?
No, we're not the treasurer for them, but what they do is when these payments have been due, they bring the money, we deposit the money, and then we turn around and send the money off to trust. The payment that we make to US Bank Trust, and they're the ones that pay all the bondholders. But it's just a formality because we were responsible for the payment and we need to make sure that the payment's still being made.
So basically, you're collecting it all up front. It's sitting in an account, and then when you get the ability time-wise to pay it, you just transfer and pay it.
Yeah, that's what will happen with this
Yeah.
defeasance trust that they're doing.
Yeah.
And so with the interest that is made off of this trust, your expenses will be paid. And then do they get it back or do we get to keep?
Well, we don't hold the money in trust. They'll have a trust agreement with a US Bank Trust. That's where the funds will go. We are not going to earn any interest on this money. We're not holding it. The trust is. But we're not paying any of their expenses to do any of this defeasance either. They're paying all the fees for it. We just have to be involved in the trust agreement because we're still on those bonds.
Yeah, makes sense. Get this off as soon as possible.
This is way too simple. I'd like something if it's more complicated, unduly complicated would be good.
Arn, we could ask, is it in the Constitution?
Yes, so I will put it on the
Full faith and credit clause there. I got it.
on the agenda for next week.
Okay.
And we'll move forward with that.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
But I still want to know what happens with that extra interest. So I assume what you put in the trust is the multiplier of it, adding up all the payments at the bond interest. And certainly it's collecting more interest now than ever. So there'll be some left over.
Well, when they come up with the amount that they'll put into the trust to defease it, they'll have a calculation in there, because yes, they'll put a certain amount of money in there and they'll buy the trust agent will buy some securities, and it will be just enough to make enough interest on it to make that payment.
And if that security defaults, then we're in trouble.
I suppose, but they're buying, the secure securities.
I know about them. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
If US Bank goes under, we've got a lot more problems to worry about.
Well, it's the bond they bought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
thanks. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
There we go.
There you
Gary.
go.
All right. Well, good afternoon, commissioners. Thanks for getting us on short notice. I don't know how much time I need to spend. We've talked with all of you I know about this. It's been an ongoing discussion probably for a couple of years about us requesting a sixth judge position. I gave you all kind of a summary sheet, and we provided a lot of other data over time. And really what we're here, and again, I'll expand as much as you want me to. Judge Hahn is here in part because she's really done the lion's share in lifting and organizing our efforts with the state in order to get that process moving along. And Danielle, our court administrator, is here because she's helped support, get all the numbers together, and so we can intelligently present this to you. As you know, we currently have 5 judges. We have a judicial need calculated by AOC of 6.9 right now. We currently fill the overage with court commissioners, which costs the county a lot more money than a judge costs the county. The county pays 1/2 of the judge's primary salary, but none of benefits. So all retirements, all insurances, all the state deductions, those are all paid by the state, whereas the court commissioner is 100% paid by the county. We currently have about 400,000 just under this year, and for 2025, it'll be 412,000, I think is what's in our budget for court commissioner expense. Our proposal, assuming that this is approved, is to decrease our request in our budget by about half. So we'd be cutting that down to about 200,000 for part-time court commissioner work. That more than covers the county cost for the judge position. The judge salary for 2025, we believe, is 228,261 based on the most recent information that we've gotten. Half of that is 114,131, which would be the county portion of that. There's obviously some other expenses that go into that, but it would be a savings to the county for that position. We believe it will give us more flexibility. Currently, our court commissioners can't do jury trials by constitution. A judge can do the jury trials. We have a 3/4 time commissioner who's there most of the time, and that position would not exist once this came into place. And there are some benefits that are paid to that commissioner because they exceed the basic time limits that kick in things like, I think there's a 401k type of retirement, that sort of thing. So there would be some savings with our other court commissioners that don't and would not be spending that much time. They're mainly there for coverage. If you want some numbers on the back of the sheet I just gave you, is just a kind of a real summary. Skagit County, which is the most equivalent county population-wise to us, they have 4 judges. We have 5. If you look at the trial, it's a little block in the middle there. In 2017, we did 286 trials. They did 71. 19, we did 234. They did 77. Year to date, and these numbers are slightly different. This goes through June. We've done 83 trials compared to their 31. So we do significantly more trials in Cowlitz than most counties. Statewide, we're the 12th largest by population. We have the we're 8th in criminal filings and 7th in criminal trials that we do. And those are 2022 numbers. So we do a lot more trials, which was why we need more judges to do that, because commissioners can't. If you look at the bottom table, and I think this is really kind of the leading indicator, this shows our clearance rates. That's how many of the filed cases that we go through and complete in a year. And if you look at that, it's an average of about 90%. What that translates into is our inventory of pending cases. I like that better than backlog. It sounds a little more academic, increases by about 10% every year. And so that's been going, that was happening prior to this time, and it's happened, this is post-COVID, this is post-Blake. So it's not getting any better when we think we need the help. So I see, defer to Judge Hahn if you'd like to make a few comments.
So what I would like to just talk about as an example, and this is just part of what we are looking at, is this morning I did the criminal trial readiness docket, as well as what we call a universal readiness docket. And that is where we have a schedule next week to fit what trials that we have scheduled into slots. And I only had 30 cases on, and I say only because in the big scheme, it's maybe about an average, but 30 trials that on the criminal docket that I'm supposed to find slots for. Obviously, that's not a reality. There are things that happen, but a large amount of time is spent just figuring out where we're going to put trials. We don't have the judicial capacity. We don't have the number of days. We've had a number of more.
Judge, is your microphone on? So the green light on?
Might not
It
be.
appears to be.
Oh. Can you hear me now?
Better? Okay, thanks.
Okay. So there are some, a number of cases that are more lengthy in the amount of time that they take. And for instance, next week, we had, I think, 2, maybe 3 cases that could have used 4 to 5 trial days, but we simply did not have judicial officers available to cover those trials. And so they get booted down the road to be addressed another day. And again, this is just one example of many issues that we deal with, and that's just on the criminal cases.
So is
creates
that
real
a
issue.
function of facilities or personnel?
It's my focus on what I'm saying at this point is personnel. In regard to facilities, I think that is something that we've been working on no matter what, that has to be addressed. And so it's a big picture down the road, but we have a courtroom, and I don't know if it'd be accurate to say, maybe Ms. Paul can correct me if I'm wrong. We do have another courtroom that is potentially available for jury trials. Whether the space would allow for it at this point, how things are set up, I can't say for sure. But definitely, I think that's another issue that we can and have been looking at.
So I haven't counted them up, but there's 2 district court rooms and 3 superior court rooms, and then number 7, which is kind of pretty tiny.
7 is no longer
Okay, so you're just down to those,
correct.
okay. Okay.
We also have the juvenile courtroom and the jail courtroom, which we use for dockets and things as well.
Okay, that's the overload you were talking about outside. Okay,
Right.
thanks.
So ultimately, it's also, like I say, we have the commissioners cannot do these trials that we need to get out, and we simply cannot get them out. The other matter that I did want to address, if you have a question of what would happen from here, as looking at the idea of approval or letter of support from the commissioners is on September 15. It will go before the Board of Judicial Administration, which is the body, the overall body of administration that would consider it or has to consider it. And at this point, they support the 6th position. And then once that is done on the 15th, then it goes to the legislature for approval.
I just try to cover what I think I've heard here. We use court commissioners now, but they can't do some of these jury trials. So some of these are getting sent to a later date because we don't have capacity and judges to do them. And we're saying that the judge's salary that is going to be offset by 200,000 reduction in other expense for court commissioners.
Correct.
So,
Right now, and I can tell you on our current budget, we have a 3/4 time court commissioner. That position wouldn't exist.
yeah,
That salary for 2023, I believe, is 163,000 plus all the benefits that go
plus the
along.
benefits.
Right. So in 2025, which is the numbers that we're looking, because this wouldn't come together until 2025 after the legislature does all their stuff. It'd be 114,000 without benefits. So if that's all you did, we're gaining a 1/4 time person more for less money. So we're getting more flexibility, we're getting more capacity, we're less out of pocket at that point.
Okay. Now, I get that cost, and that obviously the numbers look good there. The backside, support staff for a judge. Do we have adequate now, or are we talking other people down the line?
I can tell you, and I could probably defer to Ms. Paul on this. We don't have enough staff right now. We can't hire for the positions that we've got open. So we're really struggling there at the moment. When we cut back on the court commissioner time, once we're fully staffed as we're approved right now, I'm not going to say that we absolutely need an additional judicial assistant. We may. Once we get fully staffed and fully trained, we currently support a 3/4 time court commissioner. It's likely we would be able to support that person, but I'm not going to say yes or no right today. When we put our budget together for 2025 that we proposed to this body, we included the 6th judge cost and a judicial assistant because we wanted to give you a worst case scenario. Process wise, what we're asking today is essentially a letter from you folks that says we'll support the position if the legislature approves it. Because it's kind of, it's one of these things. When that all goes through, when we come back for our budget next fall, we're going to have to readdress this because we're going to have to tweak a few other things around, and we'll have hopefully a better idea of what our administration needs are. Once we're fully staffed, we're not going to, I mean, if we needed an additional person, it would be one person. It would not be more than that. I suspect there's a decent chance if we got everybody up, hired and trained, we may be able to do it the way we have. but we're struggling right now just to stay on top of things. So.
Yeah.
And I think that the cost savings and again, we still have 200,000 in our budget for part-time court commissioners. We don't use all of our budget every year. We're pretty good about not overspending. And so chances are very good that we'd be able to cover most of the cost of that, but I'd want to put the numbers together before I made a commitment to that.
I only struggle because my focus is always the people out there that we're taking monies out of wallets from and I want to know that it appears we're being efficient. If I can save our taxpayers a little bit of money and things are going through faster, what's not to like about that? But then if we end up having to buy a bunch of support staff, I'm trying to figure out if we really save or not. I don't want to burden people that are already burdened.
It's
I
not just
understand
your
that-
support staff, but also the county clerk.
I'm sorry?
The county clerk will want to add another clerk, right?
We'll want another 2.
I don't know that it would be adding one because of this, because we're like moving people on a chessboard. We're taking away court commissioner time. We're adding a judge time. I'm not sure if that increases clerk time or not. Judges, as you know, don't spend 37 and a half hours a week in a courtroom. We have a lot of other stuff we do on top of that. So whether or not it impacts the clerk's office directly, I don't know. It may have some impact there. It'll probably have a bigger effect on Mr. Marr behind me, because if we can do more trials, his folks will be busier, which is a good thing. And I guess as a secondary piece of that, and it's a very good question, Commissioner, because it is a possibility. We will need more staff, possibility. You guys get to approve all that. I don't get to just hire staff because I think I need it. I have to come back to you and explain to you why it's a good idea for you to let me have another judicial assistant. So,
But in all honesty, once you've got the 6th judge there, there'll be a lot of arguments about, well, we need to get another judicial assistant. And then the clerk of the board will insist on another 2 clerks. We have no control over that without just saying, no, we're not going to pay for it. But we're at a point here where if we turn on the fountain, we're going to beget these other issues. We don't have a very good system here. In an engineering world, things are unconstrained when there's a positive feedback. By that, it means if you go fast and the engine wants to go faster, you typically want something, if you go too fast, the engine wants to slow down. Here, it's very hard for me to see a system that doesn't have natural constraints. In the bank, if you said, well, if you want a deposit here, we're not going to pay any interest. Well, in that case, I'm going to take my deposit to the bank next door. People don't have that choice here. So it's like a closed system, and that's something to be very concerned about. So I see the numbers, but I just don't understand them. I'm not swayed because I haven't heard how it's a stable system and how justice is being served. I see numbers, and when I see a trial comparison, I'm like, okay, I guess all trials are equal. And we know all trials are not equal.
that's true.
And so I look at the numbers, I'm thinking those metrics are meant to sway me, but they're not meant to educate me. And I clearly need education because I am not swayed.
Let me try and help a little bit. We aren't a closed system. That we have a giant hole that things come into, we have no control over. So it isn't an open system in the sense that everybody who wants to file a case can come and file a case. We have no control over that. I can't say, Commissioner Mortensen, you can't file your divorce case. You can't file your land use case. You can't file your probate case because we don't have capacity. I can't tell you that. So you're going to file it and say, we can't get around to dealing with your case for 2 years because we don't have enough judges.
Well,
So what's coming in that, unlike the airline industry that actually can limit the number of tickets they sell, they don't, but they can. I can't do that. I'm on.
you're on, but I'm still having a hard time hearing.
I'm sorry. I can't limit the number of cases coming in. So we're not a closed system and our cases continue to come in. They get more complex. Some of the simpler cases that were taken away by Blake, the simple possession cases, we don't see those the same way. We're seeing more complicated cases, dealers, we're seeing more assault type cases. Those cases are not equal. They take more time. So I would agree with you that case numbers are really, it's all we have. I don't have a better way to give that to you. This is the numbers I have. What I do know is we get people who can't get trials for a long time when they're trying to get their cases resolved. That's what I see. So I see the citizens that pay all of our salaries who want to come to court and they want to get divorced. They want to get their estate taken care of. They want to sue somebody for hitting their car. Come back in 2 years, we'll give you a trial when we have time. That's, I don't like that answer.
In December of 2016, I had been elected, but hadn't taken office, and I sat in a room back there when the three commissioners at the time were entertaining Judge Evans, who was making a plea for a fifth judge. And Judge Evans said the exact same things you just said, exact meaning.
Mhm.
And to date, back then it was, well, you're denying justice to people. And his plea was particularly attractive because it was about family divorces and that kind of thing. And yet 5 years, 6 years later, I don't see one number that says, well, until the fifth judge came on board, we basically had a latency. If you wanted to file a family court kind of thing, you would have to wait 3 months and 3 days and 3 hours. You had the fifth judge, and I never got a report back saying, look what we've done. We actually are down to 2 months, 2 days, 2 hours. And hearing the same argument over again goes back to what I was saying. I don't know that we have a constraint. And I agree with you. You do not have control over everything. I think the PA's office is involved also in whatever they send over to you.
Sure.
But I don't get the sense that there is expediency as I would expect in the bank. If the bank starts to lose a bunch of depositors, something's going to happen. Here, you just reach out and says, I want more. And we've had this discussion before a bit in that we're captive of a system, but you folks are the principal players in the system. In other words, what a judge says makes the news. What we say doesn't really make the news because we don't control anything, but you folks actually do. So I think we need your help not to continue this driving the bus into a brick wall. We need your help to try and figure out what it is we have to do. And adding more people just doesn't strike me as quite the solution at the moment, because it'll happen again and again. I might ask you specifically, you cited the Skagit County numbers. Tell me what the beef is there. Why are they filing fewer? Why are they seeing fewer things? Let me put it like this. The Superior Court folks get involved because in community issues, because they care about the community. And I understand that. I don't question that. But they will step out of the line, as we've talked regarding about drug court and community court. I had quite a battle on community court that drove me nuts. But in this case, I do want the Superior Court system to try and help understand what is happening in society. So here's Cowlitz and Skagit numbers. What is going on with those numbers?
Apparently, the people that live in Skagit County don't sue, they settle cases more. That's the only solution I have for that. We don't control case settlements. Cases go to trial because people don't agree to plead guilty, or they don't agree to accept an offer on a civil case. So why is Cowlitz County more litigious, litigate? Why do we have more trials? I don't have an answer for that. We have historically, as long as I've been in the field of law, tried a lot more cases than a lot of other counties.
What are some of the out of the box possible explanations?
I don't know of any.
Okay, so for example, today we had people speak here and we don't put constraints on them. You know, and they
Mhm.
speak and speak and speak, and frankly, they speak too much, but we don't put constraints on them. And that's probably a good thing, but we are unique in that sense, and that brings more people to come in, and sometimes it's a lamentable thing. Are we attracting these issues by how we adjudicate on the bench? I mean, that's a valid question. Are we known to be easy? Are we, is a jury pool one that'll agree to any settlement award? I'm trying to find explanations. I'm just grabbing
I wish I had an
grabbing
answer.
stuff.
I wish I had an answer for that. I don't know why more people go to trial and decide that they don't want to take an offer of settlement here. That's the reality of what we have. As far as, you know, managing that, people have a constitutional right to go to trial if they don't want to settle a case, at least in a
They-
criminal matter.
Oh, I agree completely, but you guys didn't agree when the COVID mandates were here.
I'm sorry?
I agree with you completely. They have a right to proper adjudication. I'm not sure
Mhm.
what the right word is. And but during the COVID years, the court systems were extremely harsh on us. They didn't perform. The justice was delayed. And
Well, we had one courtroom, which cost this county a lot of money to put a courtroom.
well, that was your decision, not mine.
No, that was the labor and industries decision of what we could do. We couldn't do a
Like I
trial in our
said, that was your
courtrooms.
decision, not mine,
Well, I follow the law, Commissioner.
in
And
every
so
instance.
I didn't want to have the county sued for not following labor and industries requirements. So we did what we had. We had one courtroom that complied. King County, they went out and rented the Bellevue Convention Center. Some counties didn't have trials for a while at all.
Yeah.
We thought it was important to have trials going, and we tried to do that to keep moving things forward. So, I mean, I'm happy to have the discourse as long as you want. I don't have a way to explain why we're more litigious. I know we are. Those are the numbers. They've always been that way that I know of. We both have had the discussion. I know about the number of cases filed that actually go to trial. It's about between 2.5% and 4%, somewhere in there, depending upon which states you're in, what type of case it is. So, you know, case filings can generally tell you what kind of trials you're going to need to do. So that's how we come up with some of the numbers. These are actual numbers that we have of cases that have gone to trial. I took the numbers that AOC tracks.
Is there a reason Judge Evans presented to us family law, if you will, and you're presenting family law? You're not saying we're criminals are being let loose, or what's?
I'm not sure I understand your question, Ken.
If I understood what you were saying earlier, you spoke about divorces and maybe child custodies, but you didn't tell me about, and that's the same thing that Judge
Today?
Evans said. So is the sixth judge intended to deal only with those cases, or how should I look at that? See, I'm concerned about the criminal out there that takes a baton and hits me over the head because they think that I've got a few dollars in my pocket or something like that. Are we delaying trials for those people and then setting them out in the street as a consequence? Because we don't have the judges?
I'm not sure I completely understand the question. I'll try as best I can to answer that. I don't think at any point today I've mentioned family law. I know Judge Evans may have mentioned that in 2016. And would back up that in 2016, he was asking for the judge that had been approved by the state and the county in 2006. So they were filling a position that had been on the books for 10 years and hadn't been filled because of budgetary constraints.
I'm sorry, it's still hard for me to hear you. It hasn't been filled because?
Of budgetary constraints, as I
Yeah.
understand it, 2006, 2007, we had the economic crash, and that's why that position wasn't filled, even though it was approved locally and by the legislature back then. So it took about 10, 12 years to fill that position. We're hoping it doesn't take that long this one once we get it approved. We're hoping to move that forward. One comment I wanted to make, and this is, I'm not done chatting with you, but I don't want to forget this, but when this is back to Commissioner Dahl, you'd mentioned about the concern about increasing staff. When I came back over here, and it's been about a year now, I think, time flies. When asked if we want your permission to reorganize our department so that we were structured a little differently. We actually decreased the number of judicial assistants, so we don't have an individual judicial assistant. We've got a different model that we use now. So the fact that we add a judge does not necessarily dictate that judge gets an assistant. So I just want to make that clear. We've made some adjustments on how we do business. So it's really more of a pool of people. So that's just, I didn't want to forget that. So, because you'd asked that question.
So I seem to remember the ratio or the recommended number of court judges for Cowlitz County
6.9.
back when we added the fifth was already at 6.
Correct.
Okay, and we said, well, we can afford fifth. We were down 2.
Yeah.
From the original 2006 level. And one of the arguments that persuaded me the most came from the family court lawyers who said the civil cases get pushed to the background.
They do.
For months and months and months. What I'd like to, what I'd appreciate would be the numbers, if that can be developed, on how many of those civil cases are continuing to languish. Your numbers here suggest that you clear 90% of the cases every year, roughly. That doesn't tell us that level of justice part for the family law, the non-criminal cases. That's very significant. We do have a lot of divorces in this county. And that, to me, making sure that the criminals get taken care of, that's constitutional. That has to be done. There's no negotiating in that. It's the civil cases and families that languish for so long in this purgatory. I don't know if there's a better term, but it's just awful for them. And while they're waiting for room. And there, there's civil cases as well. There's still an injustice between individuals that are suing each other, but their cases aren't heard very quickly. How do we know that? I mean, there's a sense you're judges, what doesn't get happen, but how far is that languishing occurring for these non-criminal cases?
As far as the timeline
Yeah.
for getting those done, I can probably get those numbers.
Okay. Because that would be helpful for me, because I know we were 2 full judges behind when we when we looked at it before. In fact, that was one of the first things when I became a commissioner. The first kind of complaints I dealt with were from members of the bar who said, you've got this significant problem with family cases that just takes forever, and the kids are the ones that are suffering. So that was the argument. I think that was persuasive for Mr. Mortensen last time too.
Okay.
If you can provide some follow-up on that, okay, we're at the point now, they're languishing behind again. That, that might make the argument for yet a sixth.
I don't think that we've significantly improved that. To some degree, family law cases have probably done better than criminal cases because they're not jury trials. Commissioners can do those cases. Those dockets continue on. We run, I think, 4 domestic dockets, probably more than that if you count minor guardianships and protection orders. So we probably run 6 or 7 dockets. And commissioners can hear most of those cases, and they do. Not all of them, but they hear a lot of those cases. I think it's still unacceptable, the length of time that family law is probably the easiest thing for us to clear through the system, actually, because they don't tend to be 4-day trials or 3-day trials. They're not jury trials. So we can plug them into wherever we've got an opening. It's a lot easier for Judge Hahn to find a 1-day trial than it is to find a 2-day jury trial. Because we can do that virtually now.
Yeah.
We can't do a jury trial virtually. So those things have given us some capacity there. Really what it boils down to from our point of view is just simply capacity. Overall capacity. Criminal trials have historically driven our caseloads, and we expect that's not going to change. It's probably going to increase, if anything, because family and civil tends to be relatively stable. Most of our civil cases, we handle most of what comes in every year. If I remember the numbers, we're not going in the hole on civil cases. Some of them take a while, but if you file 100 civil cases, we're getting most of those. We're probably clearing 100 cases. So those aren't the ones that are going down. But we can get you some more numbers on that.
Yeah. A question and a comment. When I was looking through your other stuff and it listed all the counties and it had number of judges and it had number of court commissioners, some of them seem to be obviously different tactics. Some of them had a large number of commissioners and a lower number of judges. What's the balance there? What are they looking for when it didn't look very uniform to me? And I said, okay, and some counties are taking a different tact, and I just kind of wondering what that is.
There's a couple different things at play there. Some of your counties, which are charter counties, apparently can have more than the 3 constitutionally approved commissioners. There's a couple of kind of specialty court commissioners we can do. Mental health commitment hearings can be done by a specialty commissioner. Some of the other counties actually have full-time court commissioners. It's just a job that they do, and they're paying a lot more money to do that because it costs more to have a full-time commissioner than it does to have a judge to a county. So fiscally, I'm not sure why they do that. But there are differences within the counties. We're allowed to have 3 constitutionally approved court commissioners. That's what's in the Constitution, plus some of these specialties that we can have. Why some counties have 1, Lewis County's typically always had 1. Clark County has, I'm not sure how many they have, 3 or 4.
I have no idea.
There's a number. They've always had full-time court commissioners. They hire them with benefits and the whole 9 yards. We've taken a position where that's a part-time position and has always been a part-time, kind of a fill-in position. Our preference, I think most citizens who come to court would prefer to have a judge hear their case. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is if you have a court commissioner hear your case, your court of appeals is me. So they can come back and say, I didn't like what the commissioner did. We're going to go talk to the judge. So you end up doing the case twice, which doesn't make a lot of sense. And I think there's just a perception with some people's minds. We think court commissioners, we pick good people. We train them well. We think they do good work. They're not elected. So there's that concern, I guess, maybe from somebody coming into the courtroom. I want an elected judge, which is my right. And it's not under the Constitution, the right is to have a judicial officer. So court commissioners are approved under the Constitution to do anything but jury trials. So, but why some counties pick more or less, I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
Financially, it doesn't make a lot of sense because the judge makes more sense to the county because the cost.
The the other thing is just more of a comment. I kind of echo Commissioner Weber, you know, this is a tough one for me because I've gotten to know you guys and I have great respect for what you do over there. I don't have any issues there. I don't respect the system that well. I don't think I mean, it renders some stuff that I don't think is any benefit to the taxpayers. All tabs. Well, we didn't think you guys knew you didn't read it right, so you can't have that or this or that. And you just see some stuff comes down that make me really sick on the system. But I need to separate that from you folks because I think you do a good job and I have respect for you, but I also have a lot of respect for the taxpayer. And when I sit down across from them, I want to be able to say, yeah, I'm spending your money here, but this is what we're going to get. And I think that's what Commissioner Weber and Commissioner Mortensen are referring to a little bit. I want to be able to say, if we do this, we expect and we'll track it, this kind of stuff is going to happen and you're going to get this benefit. And maybe that's just me, the banker in me, but I like to be able to, if I'm going to take your money, I want to make sure you're going to get something for it. And I know that sometimes that's hard to show. I get that, but
So, Judge, if I heard you correctly, you said that with the fifth judge and the use of commissioners, you've made a successful dent in this backlog that I was so concerned about 4 years ago.
On the
In terms
family,
of family law, that it's not taking nearly as long to get through those cases.
I would think,
That-
you know,
that-
I think that's true.
Yeah, so the idea is that those commissioners then have addressed that problem for us. But we're spending a lot of money on commissioners when if we had another judge, at least we'd share half the salary. And then it gets down to what you mentioned at the very beginning, it's that support staff. How
Mhm.
can you make sure the support staff doesn't explode? The commissioner the county clerk was quite adamant, at least one per judge. And that she needed to have additional. And then the staffing said that there's another two. So it's like, you add a judge, then you know there's two. You're suggesting the commissioners are using some of the judicial staff
They did.
right now. So that
Yeah.
was probably going to be a wash.
I think there's a good argument for that. Right now we're struggling because we haven't filled the positions you guys have approved for us. We're having trouble hiring.
Yeah.
Once we have those people on board and up to speed and trained, we very well may not need an additional staff person to run operations like we do now.
The other consideration is that you're not making this request to begin immediately or even in the
Correct.
next 6 months. We're talking about 18 months. And if the past is any precedence, it could be a little bit longer than that. The key
Correct.
thing is let's get the position authorized by the state to give us the flexibility to save that money or readjust staff a little bit later on.
That's probably the best characterization right there is it's a multi-step process. You guys have to approve it. AOC, Administrative Office, the courts has to approve it. The legislature has to approve it. At which point it would be theoretically in our budget for 2025. We've got to come back to you at our biennial budget. We put it in there because we all wanted to be, this is what we're asking for 2025. But we'll be back next fall to look at, here's what we need with the judge. And if I guess if at that point you say you can't do it, I guess we'll have to have another discussion. But if you don't think we need additional staff or we don't request additional staff, that's a separate discussion. I mean, you guys approve positions for us. And if you don't, we don't get them. So, like I said, I think this is a good investment for the county because I think it's less money out of pocket to get more judicial time. You get a quarter more, you get 75 that we're taking out, adding in 100% for less money. And I don't know why I can just stop right there and that should make everybody happy, but I understand there's bigger discussion here. So.
And if I may, I think the biggest thing too, along with that idea, is that a Superior Court judge can do 100 duties versus a commissioner that maybe can do 75 duties. Those 75 duties, though, are subject to appeal to the Superior Court judges. So potentially could double how much time it takes for that commissioner to do that job. So you're talking about a Superior Court judge costing the county less potentially than the commissioner who can do less.
And
So-
I think the other piece of that, if those 75 things the commissioner can do, we're suggesting we transfer those to the judge. So we're not, we're getting rid of that and moving to this, so.
Yeah, that begs me to ask you, how often has that happened?
What's that, the appeal?
Right, to the Superior Court from the,
I don't have a number for you, but I can say, well, I don't want to give you a number because I don't know it, but it's not unusual. Do you want to say once? So let me just give you an example. If a court commissioner heard a juvenile criminal trial, excuse me, and they find that respondent guilty, and then that gets appealed or for reconsideration, or not reconsideration, revision by a Superior Court judge. That Superior Court judge then goes back and watches that entire trial. So it's not in writing. It happens probably fairly often, but I couldn't tell you a number.
yeah, I work on these things, I work off of numbers. So often I hear a claim, and then when I look at the numbers afterwards, it's like, yeah, it does happen, but it's really not material for the most part. We're, I'm hoping, and we are, I think, the board interested in a mediation center to try and help some of this other stuff that appears. Now, that probably only helps pretty much the district court, but maybe there's a way you can think about how a lot of disputes are exacerbated by certainly in divorce, I've seen it, we've all seen it plenty of times. Something that could have been done somewhat amicably, you go see a lawyer, next thing you know, you're blowing up the world and you're throwing grenades all over the place. And we need to figure out how to avoid that for a variety of reasons. But I'll go back to me being an engineer and a scientist also. They're not the same. Trying to look at the boundary conditions here. I've alluded to the boundary conditions if you add a judge, and the arguments are going to be the same for adding the next judge and so forth. I don't see where the constraint is on that. Because the judicial system through the legislative process has control over what will appear before them. And that's a closed system. That's not going to be a stable system. But my specific question is, what if 3 years from now, after he and I are off the bench and we stick Rick Dahl with the problem, it turns out everybody is law abiding. And we don't need 6 judges or even 5 judges. We can get back to 4. What's the mechanism there?
It's a good question. I don't have a real knowledgeable answer because I don't know that that's necessarily happened because we've not become less lawless over time. My assumption without, and this is just, I will say this is, it's not a guess, but it's the legislature creates the position. I don't know that they have the ability. They may have the ability to cut back,
See,
but that's not necessarily a local decision, I don't think. I think it's probably, it's a state office.
My impression is that that wouldn't fly. Like if next budget, after Commissioner Weber and I are gone, the next budget, people decide that we're only going to afford 3 Superior Court judges. I don't think that would fly. I'm trying to point out that I think the system is asymmetric and it's also ever growing, but it doesn't seem to have that shrink factor to respond to whatever circumstances. And I agree with you. I don't think people under the current circumstance are going to be more law abiding, but I think that's a problem of the legislature and partly of the court system. We beget a lot of problems. We have a lot of crime because crime seems to pay. That's a different issue. So what happens if the next budget we decide to fund only 3 Superior Court judges?
I don't believe that becomes a local decision once it's filled. I could be wrong on that, but I don't believe that. I don't know that. That very well may be something that is in the legislative process. the
Yeah,
state
that's
legislative process.
kind of, we
There-
lose control.
There is, I think, a provision that you can't reduce somebody's salary. You can
I-
increase it, but you can't reduce it. So
That's
you'd
a
have to wait-
salary
you'd-
issue.
You'd have to wait until a judge retires,
Yeah,
but then the length of time to pass a law to cut it
Yeah.
is pretty short and that
I-
it's not very practical.
I was talking not about reducing the salary. You've heard
Position.
me through the
Yeah.
years. I don't want to argue salaries.
Yeah.
It's a.
No, I understand your position.
Possible.
I understand your your
Yeah,
question.
I think you understood
And
completely.
I guess I would defer to Commissioner Weber. You've spent a lot more time following legislative type stuff than I do. I usually get the end product, but I don't know, is there a process like that?
At least my study of the legislature, which isn't super detailed, is that there are judicial districts formed where they don't want to add full judges. So for example, I think Wahkiakum County and Pacific County share judges. They're one judicial district.
Yeah.
That's one alternative way, but we're big enough that we don't generally share.
Yeah, we used to
We'd love
share.
to share juvenile detention centers, but we don't have a law on our side either.
Well, Benton and Franklin share some judges and they have like, I don't know, 5 or 6 judges, but they share with across. So I don't have a good answer for your question, Commissioner. I think it becomes a position that you're kind of stuck with at that point. I don't have a good answer for that. I don't know the answer. But it's
Appreciate
considered a
that.
state
Thank you.
position that the county pays a portion of.
So you did mention a kind of a deadline for us in this consideration, that you have to submit something to Olympia by the 15th of September. Is that right? Or
I'm going to defer to Judge Hahn on that. Do you have?
So I haven't looked at the date, but it does go before the BJA, the Board of Judicial Administration, on the 15th to be supported for legislation to go to the legislature for approval. And so I would suggest the sooner the better prior to the 15th. So it gets out to the board members.
and your request is for us to join the judges in a request for an additional.
It's a little stronger than that, isn't it?
We're asking you to pay for it.
Well,
Well, essentially, we're asking you to commit to fund the 1/2 of the judicial salary if it's approved by the legislature commencing January of 2025. That's the request before the board today. And then,
it would be, as you can appreciate, not legitimate for us today in 2014 to tie the hands of another commission. I mean, that doesn't work.
2014.
2024. And,
Yeah.
I'm okay with supporting the request to add it. Let the next Board of Commissioners decide if it's should be funded now. I mean, our history is it's maybe 8 or 9 years before the the county makes that final decision, but at least we have the option.
I mean, I think that's your prerogative.
That's how that's kind of how I read your letter. which
Yeah,
was
and
a
the old,
request,
like I said, the last time it was approved was 2006, I believe was the approval.
and it wasn't
it
until
wasn't-
2016.
Yeah, it
so
was
10
built in
years.
16, and that was in response to the 2006, 2007 financial debacle that happened. I would assume that there's not gonna be a lot of push from anybody if that happens again, knock on wood, it won't. So,
So
but that's what we're asking for is a letter from you guys that says we're willing to go forward with this, so we can take that to the next step. And
are
then
you,
come back.
are you comfortable with scheduling a decision next week?
Oh, for scheduling a decision?
Yeah. I mean, the public should have a chance to get the publicity about it. Have it on Tuesday next week.
We can do that. I'd like to, I'm trying to, I'm processing here. I think I need to call or maybe soon. I still trying to figure out why they use more commissioners than some, and maybe what Commissioner Mortensen was alluding to, because once you say you're funding a judge, that's forever. And I don't know if they use commissioners to give them some leeway budget wise to, do we have the authority to add and subtract?
We,
Wondering if that's what they're using as their leeway.
we have authority to manage the commissioners through the budget, but even at that, it's look, the old adage about the nose of the camel in the tent kind of thing comes to mind any number of times because I've never seen it but go in one direction only. And I look at I look at this and we have tenuous control on stuff. If you don't open this door, we can always open it again. But once you open it, you're stuck. Is really the way I look at it.
Well, yeah, and I get that on the judge. Commissioners are the same way.
Oh, the commissioners, and the Superior Court does the managing there. They'd be able to answer that question.
We hire them as needed. They're appointed by the court.
Yeah,
As needed, if you have it in the budget.
Correct. Correct. Yeah, we have budgetary approval for 1/3/4 time position, which is an
Right.
actual, not a salary, but that's been that way for several years. And then we have others that fill in occasionally.
So I think the specific answer to your question, then we retain control in that case.
Mhm.
yeah.
It's true.
So just to clarify, the request today is for the letter to support that it goes to the Board of Judicial Administration for their adopting to move it forward to the legislature. Legislature will then consider it and then whether it's approved or not. If it's approved, then it comes back for the financial part of it.
So we're the front end of this thing and we're the back end of this thing.
I'm sorry.
We're the front end of this thing and we're the back end of this thing. Although once
Think.
the front's done, at some point in time, you're going to have to fund it.
Right. Right. This really should be viewed as a commitment to fund it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're playing with the courts or the legislature. And something I really try to avoid completely.
Yeah.
I guess if you make the decision to do the letter and support, you're going to be letting another board make a final decision as to whether they fund that position when it comes due. If you approve a letter to go forward, and then the Bureau of Justice Administration approves it, and it goes to the legislature and they approve it, and then it comes back, that would be a different board, assuming that you guys are not here, and then
Right.
another board is going to have to decide if that's something that they're willing to fund at that point. So there is a secondary choice, and you're not really tying the hands, but you're giving an option to those folks at that point.
The problem with that, it's unfortunate, and I don't mean to be a real obnoxious pain. It comes naturally. That is, if you want to climb a mountain, you climb it all in a day, or you climb it one step at a time. In other words, this is a stepping stone. If we approve this, it gives our tacit, semi-explicit, well, let's call it implicit approval that we think this is a good thing. And I'm not prepared myself to do that.
I guess what I would ask, and I'm not asking you to make a commitment today, obviously, it is to be done in a public meeting. If you want to put us on, you were talking next Tuesday, was that the idea?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then
next Tuesday.
Commissioner, if any of you have specific questions that I can try and respond to prior to that time, if you could shoot that out to us, we'll respond with whatever data we can get to address the questions. And then come back next Tuesday and make a more formal request. But
Yeah,
we're here to answer questions as best we can today, and if
yeah, and I appreciate that, Judge. That works for me. People that know me know how I work. I'll do some research and do as much due diligence as I need, but I gotta get comfortable.
okay, we'll take a look at the materials we gave you because we spoke with all of you different times. Take
Yeah.
a look at those materials. If you've got some specific questions, I'll be happy to address those between now and then and come
Okay.
back again next Tuesday.
Yeah, that'd be
Okay.
perfect. I appreciate that.
Okay. Kelly, if you could put us on next Tuesday, we'll be back.
Okay.
And then if you could follow up with any questions you have so we can address them, I'd be happy to do that.
So you'll prepare the agenda summary for inclusion, right? Kelly, is that the way it works? You're gonna get a.
Would you like me to
agenda
write the,
quick request from them?
Are you wanting it officially approved, the letter, or are you just coming back for another workshop?
we would ask to have a letter approved, and if you'd like, we can put a letter together that we would propose, and then,
It'd be a motion item next week.
Okay.
Okay.
okay,
Yeah.
that'd be great. Do we need to do anything else other than this today?
Yeah, you need to submit it through Agenda Quick.
Okay.
Yeah.
We will do that, and then we'll be back next Tuesday.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Thank
Kelly,
you.
Kelly, I thought we were gonna do away with agenda quick. Working on it.
Yeah.
By the way, one statement.
You had more questions than I expected.
I find this a very difficult and curious situation because I have nothing but fond esteem of the judges. I know you both individually and I
Yeah.
know you in more detail, and I'm trying to fight something that I see, and I've got, maybe I flatter myself, I have a Cassandra syndrome, and we need to fix something, and I don't know who to reach out to or how to reach out to. I'm trying.
I wish I had an answer. But again, we'll be back Tuesday. Thank you, and let us know what questions you have, and we'll respond to them. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Could I ask for 2 minutes?
Yeah, absolutely. 5-minute recess.
Thank you. I did want to, if you have any questions, I'll be in your house, but feel free to email.
I'll do that. I will.
All right, thank you.
Hey, I don't know what. Judge?
I didn't say how you. Good to see you. If you have specific questions, or just thoughts that I can. I'll do that. I would have got this over soon, but it's crazy. All kinds of stuff. But I'll follow up with some information and if you got questions. Okay. Okay. I'll bring a sample letter. See what okay. All right. Sounds good. Good to see you.
On? There we go. Good morning or afternoon.
Not sure. Is it bright green?
Yep, it's bright green.
Okay,
You just need to be closer.
okay,
A little bit closer. Is that better?
yeah.
So today, I was coming to you, with a request for for a couple more employees. Since we've been there, our caseload has been pretty heavy, and it's we've all been trying to maneuver with what we have, and with running a 24/7 office, it's kind of hard with 3 full-time employees plus myself. I'm running calls and helping out with things, helping out in autopsies, stuff like that, which I have no problem doing. With doing that, I don't get to get my stuff done that I need to do. And then we're all doing one job and then doing multiple jobs, answering phone calls, helping families that come in, releasing decedents, all of that stuff, which prolongs getting our casework done. I am presenting, well, when I looked at it, my options would be, the best option would have 2 more investigators to offset a 24/7 office and a receptionist. But what I'm coming to you with is asking for at least 1 more investigator and a receptionist. So we have somebody manning phones and doing that type of office work while the investigators are out on calls, taking care of families, doing that stuff, coming back and getting their casework done instead of it piling up on their desk because they're answering phones, they're stopping to release a decedent, they're, excuse me, stopping to go, take care of families that come to the office and stuff like that. Having a receptionist would help us like a ton there. And then having another investigator with a 24/7 office, having 4 full-time investigators would only leave us with 8 more hours to be covered during the week. With that, it could be a casual help. We've got quite a few casual help employees, but with casual help, they're only available certain times. So I'm filling in, they're filling in for extra hours, stuff like that, because the casual help are usually ones that have full-time jobs or can just do it when they can. And currently, we're losing 3 because there was a new turnover in Lewis County, which a couple of those have been kind of doing both as casual help, but they're taking more a new position up there, which is not going to be able to have them down here. So I'm losing a few of those. And then there's a couple other ones that they have full-time, and they're only maybe available twice a month. So if I had 1 other full-time right now investigator, that would help us out a lot. And then a receptionist, we would be able to get back on track of where we need to be. And I'd be able to do my job and focus a lot more on that instead of all the other investigative stuff.
Right now, when calls come in, your people all carry phones and it goes to
Yeah.
them,
So,
even if they're out on a.
yeah. So
on a deal.
currently I'm in the office Monday through Friday. And then we have shift work. So I may be in the office all day trying to get my stuff done, but most of it's answering phones and taking care of that type of stuff, which I don't get my stuff done. Then I have an investigator that's trying to run calls and helping out in the office. So a receptionist would be very, very helpful that way, because when we go out on a call, then we have to transfer the phones to our cell phone. So then we're out on a call and the phones are ringing, which they would be ringing in the office. And we're trying to, take care of families in the investigation when office phones are ringing in our pocket too.
And what'd you call them, the casual help or whatever?
Yeah, so casual help are not full-time and they're not even part-time. They're just they're kind of on the schedule as needed. They let us know what they can fill in for. They come on at a certain time, and it was set up before how 24 hours is a $50 pager wage. So if they don't get a call out, they get $50 for carrying a phone around, staying in the county, not being able to do anything for 24 hours. If they do get a call out, then they get their hourly wage while they're working on a case. And it's really hard to
to keep casual help just because of that, because it's not something, unless you have a spouse or somebody else bringing in the main income, and you just want, experience or, to help the community or something like that, then that's usually where the casual help comes in. But even when that's what they want to do, it gets kind of tiring of giving up all your time and stuff for not much. So a full-time position, we would be able to train and actually keep them longer, hopefully. Most of the coroner offices that I know that have full-time employees have had them for a long time. They don't come around too often. So because people keep those positions.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly. How many FTEs did your predecessor have?
So it's the same as what we have now. We have chief deputy and 2 other full-time, and then the rest were casual help. I know in the past, there was a couple casual help that mainly, did a lot of covering. Those, like I said, it's really hard to find a casual help that is willing to put in all those hours and time and stuff for not much benefit and money. So plus we're spending the time and money to train them, and then they turn around and either, get a job someplace else in one of the other counties that has a full-time position available, or they go elsewhere for a full-time job.
Yeah. When we talked, I thought about this, and to me, it's almost, we're dealing with people in not a great time during their life dealing with stuff. And it's kind of a service issue for me that we have, people that work for your office and they take care of this, and somebody can actually get through to you on a phone and stuff. I'm leaning in that, even just from a service side, that is something we should do. I know you've worked with Kathy on the budget, and I know it'll be incorporated into the next one coming up, so.
Question for you. We discussed this in your office. We're still on, it's still the same thing.
Yeah.
I said I couldn't hear you that well.
Oh, yeah, it's still the same thing. I was saying the perfect scenario would be 2 more full-time investigators that would offset vacations and sick time and all of that stuff. But if I can get at least 1 more right now, that would be very, very helpful. I was and then a receptionist. I would love a full-time receptionist. And I was saying I would accept a part-time. But the more I was thinking about it and in talking with you guys, 20 hours a week only is like, less than 5 hours a day, to spread out for, it would only be, office hour times,
Yeah.
for them, but still that's like should be at least 8 hours. So, but I'm in desperate need for more assistance so that we can serve the community the best we can too. So.
Yeah. A little bit of cost is going to be offset by not using the casual help. It's not going to be much. I mean, it's going to be a bill, but I still think the service to our community, and I can't imagine, I'm probably going to side on the full-time receptionist. I can't imagine somebody out sitting with a family and their phone rings and they're supposed to take an office call. I think we can do better than that for people.
Yeah, I'm okay with the suggestion of 1 investigator and a full-time receptionist.
Yeah.
And just to add, we have been, our office has also been utilized more by the surrounding counties for autopsies too. So we'll also start seeing more, and not a huge amount of revenue coming in for the usage of our morgue. But there's more and more of the counties because of the shortage of pathologists. We have a pathologist that's, and I think I kind of touched on this a little bit a while ago, but one of the pathologists, the medical examiner in Clark County has quit down there. She's not fully done down there. She's still finishing up. But she doesn't want to have to travel. So we've talked to her about utilizing our facility so she doesn't have to travel. And then the coroner's offices would be bringing their decedents over to us, and she would do them there in our office. Therefore, it's becoming more of a regional facility to where we'll recoup cost for the usage of the morgue, and then
Yeah.
they'll take care of the other side of
Yeah.
things. And we've already had 3 in the last couple weeks, and there's more of the other counties that are reaching out to me for a contract with them so that they can utilize us when they need one.
Okay.
So
Great.
Well, I think we're good with it. Kathy, you need to have a motion so you can put it in the budget, or are you good? Yeah, that's what I mean.
Finish
So,
up the year, yeah. Which means if we say yes, it'll be 3 months before you hire anyway, right? I'm sorry. I think that's kind of the way it's gone, hasn't it?
yeah, it has, but I do have some good candidates.
we okay with it?
so-
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm actually, my mind is, they're all dressed in black.
Yeah.
It's like, couldn't you pick a bright color for your uniforms?
Could do pink.
Yeah. Okay, I think you're good. We're talking one full-time investigator and full-time receptionist.
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't see Carol. Is she on?
But Gina's on.
Gina's on.
Gina is
Mine,
on.
mine isn't working. So Gina, if you're,
Oh, Carol's there too.
oh,
Okay.
Carol's there too. Okay.
A 1-2 punch. I mean,
Good afternoon. Gina James, Health and Human Services. We just wanted to quickly touch base with the board. We've been looking at aligning our hours with the admin building. You know, the admin building did a switch here recently to Monday through Thursday. So we've been looking at that option as well, and we would like to move forward if it's okay with the board. What we're looking at, as I mentioned, is starting October 2nd, switching to Monday through Thursday, open from 7:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and remaining open during the lunch hour, which is a change from what we currently do. This change would add an additional 3 hours a week that we're open to the public. So we're excited about that. So we just wanted to touch base and see if there was any questions or if the board was okay with us moving forward and aligning with the admin building. We would like to, start it as sort of a trial and revisit at the end of the year and see how it's going, make sure that there wasn't any unintended consequences or anything like that.
you'll be closed on Fridays.
Correct.
So my impression is your clientele, it may be different than those that come to the admin building. In terms of personal crises or personal needs. Is there an uptick on customers coming through your doors on Friday?
No, it does tend to be a little bit quieter on Fridays in terms of phone calls coming in and individuals walking in. I would say probably the most traffic on Fridays would be people applying for like temporary food permits and things like that. But we plan to do some messaging and work with those partners to make sure they're aware of when we are open and when they would have to come in. So they can come in Thursday afternoon instead of Friday afternoon.
So street vendors who have a community celebration Saturday and Sunday are out of luck if they don't have their permit by Friday, right?
Yeah. Uh, ideally, they would be in before, well before that. And that's, we'd like to do some targeted messaging to those folks, make sure they're aware.
And perhaps my question revealed a little bit about my own tendency to put things off, but we have to learn, I guess.
Commissioner Weber wants to make sure you're there. I don't have any issue with it. I think you try it, and if an issue comes up, then you deal with it and fix it.
Well, and I like the idea there's additional hours actually,
Yeah,
Monday through Thursday
yeah.
that they
Mhm.
currently provide.
It
So
really depends on how those hours are used, but I'm okay with this.
Yeah.
I do have a request. It's not urgent at all, but I am curious on the count on of the people that, the unique individuals that come in. Does that need to be unique? Yeah, unique individuals that come through the front doors of the HHS building there to meet with presumably the receptionist. So if it's an appointment for someone to see Carol or see Gina, I don't, if you count them, that's fine, but if you don't, that's okay too. I'm just curious of what the traffic is into the building.
Oh, just the general foot traffic. Okay.
Yeah.
And
if
I would
the
say that the
long-
majority of our traffic is for folks that are buying birth certificates and death certificates. That's probably the majority of our front counter traffic. And we do track that, so we can get that.
Oh, that would be great. And if you could do that for a year, that would be pleasant for me. And on a weekly basis, I guess, and then maybe a couple of weeks and there go in. I'm just really curious what the statistics are on that.
Yes, happy to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Other than that, I think I heard we're okay.
Yeah.
We don't have a problem with it, Gina, Carol.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm down to, I heard you had a executive session. Is that where we're down to? Is there, Kathy, you didn't have anything?
I do have,
Sheriff? No,
I do have a miscellaneous though.
okay.
Although I wasn't able to have access through this computer, somehow I did get contacted by somebody asking a request from us. And it has to do with the activities undertaken by the collaborative. They have the services of Dr. Colin Thorne, who's a retired professor from the University of Nottingham in England, but is a renowned expert on sediment management. And they have been doing some research, some work. He's actually brought graduate students over earlier this summer and will be this fall. And they want to focus their attention at the confluence of the North and South Forks of the Toutle, which is where Harry Gardner Park is. And in order for them to get the permit from the Washington Wildlife and Fish Department, they need permission from the landowners from the park. And he contacted me and said, well, who do I ask? And I said, well, the Board of Commissioners, I think, are the ones that have to make that request. You may recall several years ago, there was extensive amount of work done at that confluence by the Lower Columbia Fish Enhancement Group. In fact, it included a community tree planting activity for the Toutle community. That was pretty great to see that kind of engagement. So it's been about 8 years since that happened. And this new research and development is trying to demonstrate some lower technology techniques on habitat restoration and particularly along the side channels that have been created at that confluence. So my request, his request is, do we grant him permission to go ahead and do the research with grad students this fall.
The answer is of course, but I'm curious, what kind of argument might state the opposite?
I think it's one of those checkbox landowner agrees. I think that's.
Oh, yeah, no, I
yeah.
understand. But I'm always trying to figure out why, if a question is obviously one-sided, what am I missing? It's really what I'm saying.
yeah.
Why would we ever deny it?
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't.
Okay,
yeah,
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah.
Great. I will let them know to go ahead and check the box.
Yep.
Okay. So you had 2? And how many? 4?
I have 2. One is for contract negotiations for 15 minutes, and then performance of a public employee for 5.
So 1 for contract negotiation, 15 minutes, performance of a public employee for 5. Okay. Any other miscellaneous, or we'll go into executive? Okay, we'll do that.
The board is extending the executive session for a period of 5 minutes until 3:28.
Oh. Be ugly.
Pretty good about you. Good. Dave, this is Tim Shay. I feel my bad, nice to meet you. Hey, good to meet you. I guess it's Amy, your niece, Amy. Yeah. Make some comments. Uncle Town? Yeah. Calling you out. So, we had good times growing up. I did have. Okay, we're back from executive session. No decisions were made. All yours.
Okay, so I do have a request from Office of Public Defense, their attorney Jamie Foster. We would like to give her a step increase effective the first of the following month, so October 1st, move her to step 4, and then have her keep her current step increase for April of 2024.
I think
I'm good
that's a
with
good
I'm
idea.
I'm good with that.
Thank you. And I do have one request outside of OPD, but
So I go.
yeah. Um, a request to fill from Public Works. They have 2 openings for their ASC mechanic. One employee promoted into the ER&R supervisor position, and then one employee just gave his notice that he's going elsewhere, so they'd like to fill those 2 positions. There's 2 openings, yes.
I'm good.
All right,
Okay.
thank you. That's all I have. Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay,
You'd make our day if you had a request that we could just say no to. Okay, never mind.
any other miscellaneous before we adjourn?
Nope. Oh. Tim.
You notice he's wearing shoes this time.
He's not
Well,
actually shoes?
actually I slipped.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so a couple things went by here that we didn't get to have a comment on. And so I'll just start with the judge discussion that took place. And to me, I was I was hearing this, right? So they got so many staff positions they don't have filled now, right? As that was what they were saying.
Mhm.
Am I correct about that? And so this is just observation is if you had those positions filled, more work would get done. If they want to hire somebody on the other side here that's at the top, position you can't get rid of, but without any support going to it really. They're already short of support, and you're going to put another guy at the top. And then judge's observation. And the other one is on the coroner. You know, I noticed that we just approved 2 positions for them. However, I find it curious that the coroner is in here saying they're short-staffed and everything. How many people work at the coroner's office right now? I mean, is there a number? 4, 5, 6? Because 3 of them were in here and they're saying they're short, but you got like what percentage of the staff is here while they're complaining about that? Now, I kind of get her argument that, you know, they need somebody to man the phone, et cetera, like that. But I got to kind of wonder, I see one of those investigators that I'm not sure that that person has any experience at this stuff, you know?
That's actually a good question. I asked, what does an investigator background need to be?
Yeah.
So let's say you wanted to be an investigator.
Well, you know, it's kind of like they're just offering mechanic jobs, you know, well, I'm not a mechanic, but how about me getting that job? You know what I mean? I'm
Yeah,
only saying that
so the
rhetorically.
answer to investigator is actually a pretty short education period. It's like 6 weeks, if I remember correctly. It totally blew me away how quick it is. And I'll bet you much of that education is the bureaucracy of it. But nevertheless, I think if I remember the numbers correctly, my colleagues will help me. They're handling twice as many cadavers now per unit time than they handled before.
Yeah.
And so I'm pretty concerned about that. I'm also very sensitive to a new person having to take over a job. And I don't want to be the one that causes them to fail on the job. So we really want to try to help the success. The other one was the receptionist, and I think the chairman kind of addressed that. It's like, there are people out there who don't really want to be talking to the coroner, but have to, if you will, and the receptionist will be a big help to that. And I think we're going to one full FTE. We don't currently have a receptionist.
Right.
Yeah. That seems like a good job. I mean, that seems like an important job to fill.
Yeah.
I mean, especially an office like that.
So
Well, we-
Tim, so I think she did mention that they have several part-timers.
Yeah.
They
That's
they
providing
call it
coverage.
that casual,
Yeah,
whatever.
casual employees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what that's who was out there covering.
Mhm.
All the staff was in. here.
She did mention they're operating under the same FTE
Mhm.
as the last person. Now, FTE can be made up different on how many hours and stuff you work. So it could be more bodies, but it's being billed at the same FTE.
And when you're talking about the coroner, you have to be careful of those
Yeah.
live
I shouldn't
bodies.
say bodies, yeah.
Okay. Well, those are my observations for today.
Okay.
And don't forget.
Don't go away.
Okay, I won't. But I
You-
wanna
you-
make
you
sure
wanna
that I
tell
get
us-
my shirt on here. There we are. Taxation is theft. Don't forget.
You want to tell us how, whether you have recommendations about having the legislative team here that was this morning, because I know you were here this morning.
Yeah. You want me to observe that? I mean,
I-
or say
I-
what I think?
Yeah,
Yeah.
did you like it? Was it useful to you? Should we?
Oh,
continue it? All
I
those
thought it
kinds-
was, personally, I could talk to those guys most of the time myself, but not everybody can. And that was, they make themselves available, and especially Jeff does a lot. Some of that stuff though, is stuff that I would say over across the street. It's like, I hear them talk all the time about being in the minority. And we know how crushing it is to have a dictator above us. And what I don't see from the party, this isn't really something to talk about here exactly, but as long as we're talking, to me, and I've heard Senator Wilson say this a few times, if we could change, there's 5 seats of senators that they got to change, that if they could do that, then they'd have the Senate, right? And so to me, instead of working so hard on the governor position, which, the thing is that you have to defeat King County. And I don't think that's possible. And I hear a lot of talk, and I felt this myself, that they're cheating. But upon time to study it, and I've kind of looked at King County, to see who's in office there, who's running for office, I don't think they're cheating. I think the people there, they want that. So if we could change these seats in the Senate, this is a Republican thing, if you could change those Senate seats, it wouldn't matter so much who the governor was. But I see the Republican Party just seems so disjointed to me. And, we've got 2 parties here in town alone. And now in Lewis County, it's the same thing. And it's something that reflects on what Larry was saying. If we got you guys into power, could you even do something? Or would you do something? So, I feel like we're doomed. I really do.
But-
And I mean, as far as a state in the higher levels go, and it's something that I don't get overly involved in because I'm trying to just, my efforts here and locally is about what I can do. I can't change King County. I don't think we can.
So the challenge with King County, from my understanding, is a successful Republican has to get about 40% of King County.
Mm.
And I think they typically get around 30-ish. Because there are some districts, particularly the more rural districts, that do elect Republicans, but there are not very many of them.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot of it has to do with the candidates you pick, who have to have some kind of a limited appeal in the rural in the urban areas. And that's always been a challenge because they aren't necessarily successful at winning the nomination.
Yeah.
Because the Republicans are pretty well rural dominated, but
Yeah.
that's just, the last time, the last Republican governor we had was the executive of King County. And before that, it was, you know, a state representative from King County. So.
You know, here's something that, you know, Jim Walsh has just recently taken over as and I didn't care for the guy in front of him either, you know, and I like Jim. I've known him for a while now. But the fact is that now that he's taken that position, I've seen him come out and say, well, this is what we got to do. And it's a bunch of resolution stuff, you know, and it's like, it seems again to be, what are you doing? You know, it's like, that's not gonna, you know, how many of these initiatives have ever got the signatures to actually go through? And from what I've seen, 0. And they come out with 11 resolutions last time, and I don't know how many they got down there to sign right now.
Problem is you're thinking the world hasn't changed or moved. The mores have changed a lot. The gas tax changes the environment substantially. We shouldn't stop trying, and people oftentimes are not elected the first time or the second time, but the third they are. So you want to be careful about throwing in the towel too soon.
Oh, I'm not throwing in the towel. I enjoy the battle to some degree. It's
Right,
I have fun at this. I don't know if you guys noticed, but it's fun to wear the shirt and to bitch a lot, you know. So but the
Right,
fact is
you're doing that on the local scale. And I'm just saying, give Jim Walsh the opportunity to do that on a grander scale, which goes back to my assessment of what happened in the morning. This was just sort of like a trial. I think our chairman came up with an excellent idea. We didn't really discuss very much substantive, but I'm looking forward to this being a forum in the legislative district 19 and 20th where people come. I want to see everybody there, and we're going to have some strong discussions about some particular issue.
Yeah.
But you got to start slowly. And
Yeah.
I think today
It develops over time.
Oh, yeah. And, you know, I think having those guys in here, first of all, let's just go back a little bit and say, you know, this not having a time limit and us being able to get up here and say stuff. And I can see you guys, and I feel it out here myself when these guys start rambling on about 25 different things and they're not even staying on one subject. They're just like crossing back and forth. I can see the strain, you know, it's like, and you guys have patience that, you know, I wouldn't have that, you know what I mean?
We need to give somebody a sign in the audience, maybe you, that you can hold up when it's time for them to stop.
Yeah. Well, or maybe a big cane.
No, he's correct, because most of the time, by the time we get sort of, you can see I get a little irritated. Probably 2/3 of the audience says, come on, guy, move on.
Yeah.
Let's get on with it.
Well, I was feeling that today too, but I've got to say, the fact that you let it happen, you know, because you could be like all these other councils and not have that. And this, having the senator and the representative in here today and having an open discussion like we did, but it just builds up. It's great. I mean, couldn't say enough about that. Sorry, I'm shaking, but it's cold.
Yeah.
There is a halfway measure there from being dogmatic to allowing everything to go. And I worry a little bit when I speak up that I'm out of order, and I look over to the chair. I'm perfectly happy calling it out, but I don't want to supersede any authority that is right. And so I wait. But yeah, I would ask somebody, I would start the original thing. Please, when you come to speak, please make sure in this situation, when those guys are there, it's not a personal topic. It's a topic that affects more than just you. It's not your barking dog neighbor or something like that. It's something that other people would be interested in.
Well, and it's like, I felt like those people that spoke about the sand pit, they had some legitimate complaint, but they kept, like you said, you know, you've said the same thing now 5 times, you know, or I think you said that.
Yeah.
And I was talking to him out there, you know, and I said, and I've told other people this too. if you come in here to talk, you know, make it so that we can stay with it, you know what I mean? And don't drag it out 10 different ways, you know? But to me, and what they were complaining about, if there was damage taking place to the county road, that guy should have to pay that, you know? Just like if I drive an excavator down the road, you know, I should have to fix the road if I mess it up, right?
See,
I mean, they have a complaint, but they were making it too long, but you could see their frustration by it. And I know how it feels because, like I say, they load them rail cars when they do that, and that store all does the loading, but it's the railroad. And there's no dust control. And I mean, when they were building the tracks and they were loading these cars every day out there, man, everything I had was like this thick in dust. And one day I went out and the guy was right across from the house and I was taking some pictures and I noticed he moved and went down and started loading cars farther away. But it just seems to me that, you know, in my experience of, you know, driving the roads in the woods or, you know, back when you could, or my work as a truck driver at the mills, all Weyerhaeuser, they water all their mill down all the time. All the mills around here do. I've seen that, and I've seen them doing it out in the woods. Nobody's going to tell the railroad what to do. I know that, but the rock pit guy, he should have to do it. And I go to DeRozier's, which is right next to that, and that's where they get their sand. I think that's where most of the loads go. It's like DeRozier's takes care of their, you know, I've been out there and seen their water truck going.
Do you know what the boot is? Like you park illegally, somebody puts a
Boot on
boot
your
on
car,
there?
yeah.
Yeah, that's sort of instant. That really gets the message right then and there. We don't have any mechanism, and that's part of what I was trying to.
Yeah, I could
point
see
out.
that. You're not you're not law enforcement.
Well,
know?
not only that, I would, the people instinctively will tend to know what is just and not just. But the laws are such that it's trying to give everybody the benefit of the doubt beyond any sense. And there's got to be a balance in there. We're swung way over on one side. And so I just want the public to really understand, while they may appeal to us, there's nothing we can do because you voted for those guys.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say it that way because that's like passing the buck. And what does every politician do? It's his fault.
Yeah.
It's his
Wow.
district.
It's that other department.
After 2024, it's going to be both of your faults.
Exactly.
I-
Well, I gotta just
I
say
can only give you a
overall,
quick learner.
coming here is, you know, it's something I've come to enjoy. I really do. And I mean, just the mechanism that you guys have put in place of allowing people to speak and taking the time to listen, even when it's hard to listen.
Hey, let me do one thing for you. It's a preview. Kelly, could you put the very first meme up, the yellow one? You know, I've been thinking about why we can't seem to solve problems. And you've got to take human nature into account when you're deciding on how to do things. And this is probably the fundamental start. Here we go. Yeah, it's got to scroll up just a little bit.
Yeah. I saw your post in Facebook about that.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's it. People are always trying to say, oh, look at this poor person suffering from it. Well, it's like the balanced budget at the federal budget. Has any candidate ever gone up and said, I'm going to extend the deficit?
Yeah.
Well, Joe Biden, I think, did and has.
Well, okay, that's true.
And it'll be good for us.
Yeah.
That's
you-
the best part. Yeah.
You'll be happy. But the thing is I see where, and I mean, you guys are obviously way more knowledgeable and experienced at it, but I don't look at you guys as it should be solving people's problems so much. You know what I mean?
Correct. But how do
you're-
you start to get that message out?
Yeah.
You got to move them off the mark right now, which is like I just heard there was a $2 million, no, I have to be careful here. There was an award of a big chunk of money for someone who was in very bad physical condition to start with, and they drank something to excess and they died, and the jury awarded them a huge chunk of money.
The family,
Beg pardon?
the family got the money. You said he died,
Yes,
so the family got.
the
money.
family got it, yeah.
Well,
I'm
that's
sorry.
kind of what, yeah.
He took it with him to his grave, Dennis.
They
The
wrote,
coroner had it.
they wrote him a check and put it in the deal with him.
That works.
Works. As long as it doesn't get cash.
Well, you know, it's like what I was trying to say earlier, you know, is that, you guys, you know, the Constitution is what you guys are supposed to be following. And, you know, it's like what I said to Jeff and Joel is that, you know, we need to be focused on the Constitution. You start going in and, you know, it's like the guy about the robotics team, you know, and he asked Jeff, you know, and Jeff says, well, I can write a letter to the guy as a senator. And it's like, I'll probably talk about this with Jeff the next time I see him, is that, hey, you know what? That's not your job. You know, it's not your job to be promoting essentially, you know, and I mean, it's a good thing, I guess, but it's a special interest kind of thing, you know, and it's like, it's not really your job as a senator, you know, and
I repeat what I tried to say and I baffled it. The Constitution is not to constrain you, but to constrain us. And if we are not permitted specifically to do it in the Constitution, it doesn't fall to us.
yeah.
Like
It's not your job to solve, you know, and it's just like, they go on all the time about affordable housing and how are we going to create more housing and make it more affordable. That's something you can't do. You can't fix that. It's not government's job to fix that.
Well, we
It's
can
just
hire
not.
consultants to do that.
Every fix they have increases the price.
Yeah. And it's like, you want to make housing more affordable, lower our gosh darn property taxes. You know what I mean? I'm in a situation where luckily my house is all paid off and everything, but my property taxes keep going up, you know, and I can never count year to year. I mean, it's gone up over $1,000 in the last 2 years. And it's like, I can never like budget, you know, like for the next year, I've got to like, is it going to go up another 500 next year? I don't know.
Wow.
But it's like, if you want to make housing affordable, lower the taxes and
You know,
get the hell out of the way, you know?
but you guys that don't owe anything on your house should be able to pay more.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got
Yeah.
your own, you've got your own mortgage.
Yeah, you know, I don't have a $5,000 a month house payment, so obviously I should be good for that money to, you know, throw in the tax pile.
I have.
So it was kind of interesting. I think our first guest this morning, Mr. Dragic, was talking about using the county's assessment
Oh, yeah.
as the basis for buying property. That means
Sure.
you're not free to
Yeah,
negotiate. So
That's so
I-
I'm
crazy.
not sure
I-
anybody sells for the
Oh,
appraisal. I mean, the county's assessment value.
I can tell you, people who come in and want a mortgage and it's, I'm not selling my house for that, or, you know, mine's worth more than this.
Yep, yeah, your house is always worth more than the assessment,
Yeah.
So
except
my,
on tax payment day.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I have family members who are still in Southern California, and they haven't moved from their house in the past 3 decades or something like that. Their property tax was actually frozen by Prop 13,
Mhm.
and it could only creep up a very modest amount. So while the guy next door to them who just bought the house next door is paying maybe 5,000 a year, they're still paying 1,500.
Well, you want radical, I think your property taxes should be at the value you bought the home. Cause
Oh,
it doesn't get a new value until it resells,
But
Yeah.
I
I like that idea.
but
I,
that would never fly.
Yeah.
You wouldn't find argument from me on that. For one thing, could you show your T-shirt again?
Yeah.
Let's see, I gotta get this
Yeah, you-
tilted a
you
little
got-
bit.
I had
Yeah.
one other thing. How
Tilted
long
in
is,
the opposite?
how long has Representative Orcutt been in office?
Oh,
Forever.
No, what-
19,
Ed's
I
been
just
in
came
there
across that.
20 years.
I think more than 20 years. He's just about the senior member.
Yeah. And he's never been in the majority.
They've been tied once, I
He,
think.
he
but-
told me that, out on the golf course. He said,
Yeah.
I didn't know how long he's been there. He says, my whole time in the legislature, I've never been in the majority, or I'd be.
Ed's a good friend and he's a good, sharp guy. But you hear from Jim Walsh and Jeff Wilson far more often than you hear from Ed Orcutt.
I've never seen Orcott personally. And
Oh.
I mean, I go to a lot of stuff. I'm not all of it, but I've never once seen him speak, or he just like, I see his signs up every time he gets elected, but
His career has been pretty interesting. He's very rarely ever been seriously challenged.
yeah.
In
Which
fact, I
means,
can't remember. Can you remember a time when he was challenged?
He was not challenged,
Last time,
last
I don't
time.
think he had anything.
but there was a guy up in Tootle that challenged him 4 years ago, I think.
Who did?
He's in that family that writes letters all the time from Tootle.
Oh, Zahn?
Yeah. But again, they don't run anybody against him that can win. I mean,
Mm. Yeah.
he consistently wins with 70-80% of the vote. So, yeah, if you don't have competitive races, you don't do a whole lot of campaigning.
We're stretching it here. Well, the one thing I kind of wanted to go back to, and I said this to Senator Wilson one time. I said, on the initiative thing, of having so many all the time, we never get signatures enough for any of them. Why don't you just pick one? Just do one. That's something I could get behind. You know what I mean? I would go door to door with one. But last year, 11, can you imagine showing up at somebody's door?
too many.
Here, sign all these things, there's no way you can do that.
And
Yeah.
that comes after all of the advisory ballots we have to vote on,
Yeah, no kidding.
right?
Well, they illegalized that
20.
now, right? I mean, or they
Did
took
they
the
do
advisory
a
votes
vote?
away. You don't get to make an advisory vote anymore. So, yeah, we're in dire straits, but it's, I'm not giving up.
So when we got back yesterday about 5, something like that. First thing I did was gather up all the daily news, all 6 of them. And I read through them. And I found the article that talked about how great the economy is in Cowlitz County. Historic unemployment, low unemployment since Reynolds closed, and more jobs being produced. They said the only little question mark is there's about 3,200 adults that have chosen not to come back into the workforce.
Yeah.
So that means there's still potential for more job growth.
Yeah,
Well,
they don't get
Heard
they
those
don't get
numbers
counted
along.
in the numbers either. Yeah.
one of the things that I noticed is just kind of taken off here a little bit, but when I was working, I had been injured. And so I had a couple of years where I couldn't work, and then I got back into the workforce. So I went from basically 0 taxes. I started making money. It was great. Then at the end of the year, it's like, holy cow, I landed in this tax bracket that's like insane. And then from there on, it's like the money that I would like get a raise. So I'm going to make X number more this year. That all went to taxes. And looking back on life as a worker guy, you would get overtime, and you used to be like, all right, time and a half, I'm going to make a lot of money here. Time and a half, that just goes straight to the tax man. That you don't get any of that. And I got to tell you, it's like from being a truck driver, the hours that you put in are insane. And because there just aren't enough truck drivers. And if you actually paid truck drivers for their time and what they're worth, everything, you wouldn't be able to afford it basically. So they're getting screwed as a workforce. I've been part of that. And this trying to make that one step up, I never could do it, and it's like, when I had kind of a choice, I could work a few more years and then hit my Social Security, but it's like, why? because all I'm gonna do is just pay taxes. It's gotten to that point where it's like, now, because I've worked, I don't know, learned the system, I suppose you might say. Then I'm coming in low income, and low income entitles me to a lot of stuff, social security wise and insurance wise and stuff. You can see why people wouldn't come back to the workforce. It's like, I really have no desire to go back. It's not that I wouldn't feel like happy to make some money, but the money I make just goes to taxes. It's just this circle all the time. And I never could make that step above that. I was always in that tax bracket where I just get hit hard all the time. And I can't tell you how many audits I had to go through in my working career. I don't know why they picked on me. Maybe because I walk around with a taxation as theft shirt or something, but man, I mean, it was brutal, and it's just tough. I'm so glad to be retired and have nothing but time, to mess with you guys.
You remind me of a lesson we used to have when I was teaching, and I usually taught seniors, and we would end up talking about paychecks. And a handful of kids would have a part-time job, and so we'd ask, well, how did you feel when the first time you got that paycheck? And every single time it says, made me mad, because I'd already counted up how much I should have earned, and it was less. There's those taxes. And of course, for seniors in high school, the biggest tax is Social Security.
Yeah.
And they say, we're not going to get Social Security.
Yeah.
I'm paying to that empty hole, and it was a good, good discussion. I used to tell them, I said, you can expect on average 30% of your income, over the course of your working career. It'll be higher and lower in some years. I said, 30% of your income is going to be spent by the government.
Yeah.
So if you don't participate in politics in some way or other, you're letting your neighbors dictate how to use your 30%.
That's pretty much the same message I give to the younger people when I'm speaking to them, is that
Be involved.
my generation is totally ruining your generation. You have no hope for your future. If you don't vote, you have to. And when you look at the graph of the age brackets that vote, it's 65 and above are making all the decisions. And
Well, part of that, though, you understand, they want to protect that Social Security.
well, yeah, I do.
Yeah, just a couple of comments. The number of 30% is way too low,
Too low.
because you have to include the sales tax, the excise tax, the
Property
property
tax.
tax. You go through and you're lucky if you can keep half of what you made.
That's true.
Yeah, then the other one has to do with, oh gosh, here we go, senior moment.
Social Security.
Extra senior moment. It was a very, very important point.
So
I heard,
when you remember it at 10 o'clock, call Rick.
yeah.
There you go. Well, anyway.
Your point about people not participating, somebody told me the other day, in fact, I think it was Dar. She said, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
Yeah.
So,
And it amazes me how few people in these important ages, where they're the most affected, then they don't vote at all. And it's
Well, and I always go one step further. I said, you do realize that less than 1% of the people in the United States actually contribute to political campaigns.
Yeah.
Everybody should be contributing to political campaigns.
Yeah. Be part of the process. It took me a long time to learn that. And, really, if it weren't for, I always voted, but I didn't always know who or what I was voting for. I can think back of voting for Patty Murray one time, but I didn't know who she was or anything. And it's like, I still hurts that I did that, that I checked her box one time. I know I did, because I was like, I don't know. It seems like everything's okay. I had no idea. And but sadly, if you're working, it's hard to follow this stuff. It's hard to follow this stuff coming here, and I see how much work you guys do. I'm only seeing a tiny fraction And it's like, today, you guys have to stand up, you guys are like, you got the court here, you know what I mean? You got judges. And it's like, I don't know how you do it. I'd be scared all the time.
We are.
Well,
Yeah.
it was interesting. I was gone on vacation, but I took my computer fully expecting to communicate. Well, we now have a double
Yeah.
Authentication, yeah.
process. And I didn't know it had expired until I opened it up on vacation and I needed my key. I'd never done that before.
Hmm.
So I
Yeah.
couldn't use it at all. But somebody found a way to get a hold of me. The guy that asked, the professor that asked to use Harry Gardner Park for his research.
Yeah.
He tracked me down.
So that guy's from England, huh?
Yeah.
And he's coming here to study.
Professor,
coming here to study.
he's retired and he has moved to Vancouver, but he
Oh,
maintains his ties. So he's getting graduate students from University of Nottingham.
wow.
And he's been making all kinds of pretty cool recommendations on
He-
sediment management.
He has a nice green outfit too.
And an
I
accent,
got
I'm
your
sure.
joke.
Yeah. What's wrong with your computer?
I don't know.
Mm.
It's been sitting here Zoom, not responding.
Do you mind
Although
if I look
It
at it?
shows there, but
Shows your name up there, but not.
I
your
know,
picture.
but
Yeah.
not my picture. I can't.
You
Well,
mind?
Sounds like it.
We're gonna adjourn here in a minute and I'm gonna
But-
shut it all down.
Yeah, I'd like to play with it just before, I mean, we can officially close the meeting and then.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Tim. We will adjourn.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Tim.
I see how hard you work. I'm amazed by it. I really.
Well. No, that's.